Before I get too far into this, my overall thoughts on the film is I still enjoy it. Certainly not my favorite film in the series. I'd say the first film was still definitely that. I'd say I probably like Escape a little bit more. I'd say I probably like it definitely more than Beneath. Definitely put it above Battle. I'd say probably about maybe even or a little bit above Conquest, because it definitely has higher production values than Conquest. Definitely had a higher budget than Conquest, but it's hard to say if I enjoy it or Conquest more. I got to watch Conquest more recently and then it back to back, but it does still have a heart like it does, like that film does. Its heart is kind of on par with the first two, but in a different way, which I will get to shortly. I definitely like it better than the Burton film. It's been a couple years since I've seen that, but I can definitely say I like this better than that, mainly because it reboots the whole series, and it doesn't try to copy the same ending, even though the ending in the Burton film is taken from the book, but I've already gotten into that in my first impressions video. I will say this, though. A couple of the little homages they threw into the original film felt very, very forced. It was mainly the things like, take your paws off me, you damn dirty ape. It's a madhouse. It's like, ha 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 ha. We get it. We get it. First movie, as Nostalgia Critic would probably say. Now, the ones like Bright Eyes and, of course, the fire hose, that didn't bother me. I mean, fire hose. There's bound to be one. And, of course, the apes being encaged and all that. That's more of a small one. But there were other little homages that I did not notice. Like, some characters are named after actors. Like, the orangutan is named Maurice Evans. The gorilla is named after the actor that played Julius the gorilla in the original one. Stuff like that, that's stuff I'm fine with. And this is one I never noticed before, but the drug in the film, the first one, 112, running time of the original movie. That's a nice little homage right there. It's stuff like that. But it's the stuff when it's like too on the nose, it's like, you really had to do that. Now, for those of you who don't know, the plot is our main character, main human character that is, James Franco's character, Dr. Will Rodman. He's a scientist who's trying to figure out a cure for Alzheimer's, and he's testing this drug on chimps, mainly because, being our closest living relatives, if we can find something that works for them, we can apply it to work to humans. Now, he has a personal stake in this, as his father, played by John Lithgow, has Alzheimer's, and he's deteriorating fast. As we see him in the first few scenes of him, he's really going. Doesn't remember things well, obviously. And you could tell in a couple years he's probably going to be so far gone. It's like, yeah. And at one point in the film, the nurse just can't put up with him anymore. He's like, he needs to be in a home. The trial that they have on this one chimp looks like it's going to go well, because her intelligence has increased dramatically thanks to it. So it seems that if you use it on someone who doesn't have Alzheimer's, it puts their brain into hyperactive mode. The chimp goes seemingly nuts, and they have to put it down. And because of this, the whole project is canned, and they have to put the chimps down. Now, after they've done so, and Franco goes back up, they find out the reason why the chimp, who they nicknamed Bright Eyes, went insane. She was protecting a baby. Now, this is one of the minor things with the plot that I complain about. It's like, these guys have chimps. And since they're caring for chimps, I'm going to take a wild guess that they at least know the basics of chimp behavior and all that. And they can't tell that a female chimp is pregnant. I mean, I'm no scientist, but when you first get a chimp in from the wild, wouldn't one of the first things you do would be to take blood work and all that, especially if you're going to be running tests on it, just to see if anything abnormal pops up? When one of the first things pops up is like, there's a hormone on this test that's a little abnormal, we've got to take a more specific one. Ah, she's pregnant. As I said in the comment section on another video, at least Zero from the original series would be able to tell when a human is pregnant, even if she doesn't have some of the more advanced testing they'd be able to do in this film. And you would think they'd be able to notice she gave birth, like, why is there blood and is that afterbirth on the floor? That's really the only major problem I have with the whole plot. Just that one thing, it bugged me the first time I saw the film, and it still bugs me this time. But put that aside, because there are a couple minor things with the original films that you scratch your head a little bit like, huh? You guys want an example? Hey, wait a minute. How did they manage to get the spaceship out of the water this fast, and how could they have fixed it? Franco's character, Will, decides to take the chimp home with him, and his father ends up naming him Caesar because he starts quoting Julius Caesar randomly and he gets the name. Now, Will raises Caesar, and he can tell that he's a very intelligent ape. Almost 10 years go by, because first we get a time skip 3 years into the future, where Caesar gets injured once, which is how Will meets his girlfriend, Caroline. Insert Neil Diamond jokes here. And they eventually become a couple, thanks probably to the whole meeting there, and Caesar's little wingman thing with sign language, which that's one thing. Caesar is taught sign language, which, if you actually do your research, is not as far-fetched as it sounds. Coco the gorilla and Kanzi the bonobo, which, other than humans, is the closest related species of apes to chimps, and he knows it to the point that he can actually carry out commands and communicate in a rudimentary fashion with humans. All I'm going to say about it is, put the pine needles in a refrigerator plus hesitation. If you're able to find the video, you'll see what I mean, because that video is so cute, just the hesitation, like, did you just say what I think you just said? That's basically what the look says. Now, after the time skip to the last part of the film, you can tell Caesar has learned a lot, his intelligence has increased, but you can tell that he notices that there is a difference between him and the humans. Which, it's bound to happen, you know, it's an ape that is intelligent, he was raised by humans, but you can tell he's not one of them. And as the film goes on, he kind of has an identity crisis, especially when he snaps defending Lithgow's character, when he starts to have a relapse, because one thing I kind of skimmed over is that Franco's character does take some of the cure and use it on his father, so he sees it works. But then, after years of using it on him, since it's a virus technically, the body starts to develop antibodies towards it, which is why, on a side note, in my personal opinion, if we were going to kill Alzheimer's, technically we want to kill it if we want to cure it. If we want to cure Alzheimer's, using a virus, probably going to be a bad idea in the long run if we want to have a lengthy cure, because antibodies. Now, eventually, this is why Will has to make a stronger strain, which is eventually what leads to the thing that makes the apes smarter, and the plague that happens in between this film and the next film, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Caesar ends up mauling a guy, which is why he ends up in the ape sanctuary, which do exist, but ones like primarily primates do not look like this. They're usually more outdoor things with like big cage sections for one or two chimps, depending on how the chimps' personalities are to interact with each other. They don't usually do them like they are like in the film. There might be some out there, but you can tell that this was designed by a set designer and our screenwriter just to make it a little bit easy for the chimps to escape. This is more of a nitpick, except for maybe how they escape at the end. It's like, it really shows their ignorance in managing apes with how they designed that tree in the center, but that's a major nitpick aside. I can ignore it just for the entertainment value, but it's still there, and it's like, if you actually designed that, you deserve to let this apes escape. Not to say apes don't escape from these places. Anyway, I mean, even in zoos, apes escape all the time. And of course, one of the ape escapes at an ape sanctuary led to a mauling incident, which, that one was sad because the people who got mauled, the gentleman, him and his wife were there to visit their own pet chimpanzee because it was their chimp's birthday. They even brought a cake. That's what got the other one excited, and that's why he got out to go see what all the fuss was about. I just wonder what was going through the one chimp's head. He's just there like, do we cake? Yeah. All of a sudden he's like, oh no, what's going on? Caesar, his first interactions with chimps, they go about as well as you think. The only ape he really is friends with is Maurice the orangutan, and there he can communicate through sign, because as Maurice says, circus orangutan. Or as the subtitle in the version I originally watched said, circus monkey, which I think is funnier if you were to say that, because then it would explain Caesar's chuckling a little bit more. As you can tell, eventually in the end, Caesar does get his hands on that one drug, gives it to the apes, they all escape, and it ends in with a showdown at the end, which the showdown is what you would expect for this film. It does have some heartfelt moments, though, like the ending when Caesar and Will hug, and Caesar's like, Caesar is home. The fact that Caesar does not want to do any violence that is unnecessary, like he does not want the apes to kill any of the humans. Like when they're escaping, the only human he kills, Felton's character, and that's because he was a mean guy to apes, which, looking at this guy, it's like, who would have hired this guy for an ape sanctuary? If you're running a sanctuary specifically for apes, whether ones from science labs, ones that are actually owned by people or were taken from people, you know, ones that you can't really put in a zoo that they don't want, or will probably not get along well there, or in the transit process from there to go into it. Because as a side note, most places like this are usually non-profit. They're kind of in the vein of Tippi Hedren's Wildlife Sanctuary. At least one like primarily primates is. You're going to want people who love apes, who want to actually interact with them on a daily basis, and who want to devote their life to making their lives better, especially those who are in medical labs. Why don't you get a guy like Felton's character who basically goes out of his way to annoy and antagonize the chimps? I have no sympathy for what happens to him in this film. He deserves it. Now, the other character there, who's the son of Brian Cox's character, who's the guy who actually runs the primate shelter, at one point you could tell one of the chimps is going to want to kill him, but then Caesar jumps in and like, no. And he just basically throws him in the cell, locks him to basically save his life, and they're like looking at him like, you were never mean to us, so we're not going to hurt you. And a couple times when they're escaping through the city, when some of the other apes go to try to kill him, Caesar steps in and like basically gives them like, no killing. Kind of reminds me of from Battle, ape must never kill ape. Kind of that mentality. Caesar doesn't want to cause any violence. I mean, they're escaping, so there's going to be some fighting, but he doesn't want to kill if it's not needed. The only other person he authorizes the death of is Stephen Jacobs, which is David Oyelowo's character. Sorry if I mispronounced that last name. He's basically the main antagonist of the whole film. He's the guy that runs the company that Will works for. The guy we see in the commercial, like, I'll make money. He sets everything in motion in the third act because he wants to make money off of this cure, which I can understand. A cure for Alzheimer's is money in it, but it's like, you're going to disregard what Will is saying now that you got those little things? As it says in a Disney movie, money, money, money by the pound. And Caesar's arc is the heart of the film, because he starts in the beginning confused about what he is. He's a chimp. He's raised by humans. He has some human attributes. He goes and meets the other chimps. He starts to see what it is like to be a chimp, and because of his heightened intelligence, he notices, like, you know, they kind of keep us in a bad place, which is why he doesn't want to go back with Will when Will comes, because he also thinks Will kind of abandoned him. And then, of course, seeing how Felton's character constantly treats the other chimps, he's like, basically it's like an Elephant Man moment. I am not an animal! And basically helps him escape, and his arc completed. Basically it's like a Spartacus thing. He rises up, you know, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. And you can see why he's going to be the leader of these apes leading into the next film, and then of course the film that's about to come out as I record this. Andy Serkis is Caesar, his motion capture, excellent. And watching the DVD, there was actually a behind-the-scenes featurette. It's only about 8 minutes long, give or take, called The Genius of Andy Serkis, where they're basically showing all the behind-the-scenes footage of him. They're all talking him up. Now, according to an article I read not that long ago, not all the things we see of his motion capture work is his on-set stuff. They like tweak certain aspects of it. How much of it is tweaked, I don't know, so I'm just going to put that out there. Not saying he's not a genius when it comes to acting on set with all that, especially with the motion capture work, but at the beginning it was right place, right time. But by this point in his motion capture career, he's mastered it to the point where he is, I'd say he is to motion capture what someone like Lon Chaney was to early makeup work, and what I guess you could say what Rick Baker was to makeup effects before he decided to retire. But I've heard mixed things. I don't know if Baker's fully retired now or not. Now, in addition to this, there's a Mythology of the Apes featurette on here where they talk a little bit about the original Planet of the Apes films and its impact on this film. You know, that's how I noticed some of the little tributes they did in the film. And also, this is one thing I also noticed, even independently, but looking at this, it's like, okay, this was an intentional thing, and that is that the film, it's written and played out in a way that this could be the starting point of the original films, or it could be just a separate timeline in an alternate reality where similar events happen, but, you know, different events set them in place. So if we end up in a Planet of the Apes society kind of like the first film, it'll be different because of different circumstances. I would rather see that than see this as a film that leads into the first film, because we all know the whole thing with Alien, that might not be the best course of action, especially since this is also, I believe this is also a Fox film, yep. And then it has 2 deleted scenes. One, of course, is Kobo with the gun, and the other one is the original version of the events they had for the main villain's death, which I'll say that's a change I'm glad they did, because it makes more sense for the Bonobo to do it. Some other things to mention is that the film was directed by Rupert Wyatt, which the only other films he's directed that have been released thus far are The Escapist, which he directed before this, and The Gambler, which he directed afterwards. And his next film is going to be Captive State. I'd say, from a directing standpoint, he did a decent job. And we see a little bit of him in both behind-the-scenes featurettes, and he talks okay. I can definitely say he set up the shots well. He got good performances out of the actors, especially Franco and Lithgow. Andrew Lesnie handled the cinematography. And he is an excellent cinematographer. Like, just look at some of these films he did. He did both Babe films. He did the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit trilogies, which he won an Oscar for Fellowship of the Ring, so he knows his cinematography there. He also did King Kong, and this is one I was a little surprised to read on the list. He's the one that did the cinematography for M. Night Shyamalan's adaptation of The Last Airbender. Looking at that, I'm like, okay, that explains why that film at least looks good. It's been a while since I've seen the film, but I can't really say much else about that film. At least it looked good. That's one thing I think I remember praising in my review of it. So I could say, well, this guy doing it, yeah, the film at least looked good. He passed away in 2015, so he does have a decent legacy, and at least he won an Oscar during his career. I'd say probably my favorite work of his is probably the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Probably Fellowship is my favorite out of all of them, and mainly like how he did this, handle the cinematography for Moria. I think that alone was worthy of the Oscar nod. James Franco, Lithgow, Cox, Felton, those are the main cast members. Caroline is played by Freida Pinto, who, other than this, she was in Slumdog Millionaire, and she's going to be in the 2018 Jungle Book movie, also with everyone's favorite motion capture king. Now, the score was handled by Patrick Doyle. I don't think I really need to talk about what he's done. Thor, say no more. Earth to Asgard. Now, nothing else to say about the film. I mean, I enjoy it. Like I said, I put it around the middle of my ranking. Definitely a film I could see myself watching again. I'd say thus far in the new Apes films, it's probably my second favorite, because I think I like the next one more. At the time of recording this, I haven't rewatched it, so I can't really say, but I can definitely say from the first viewing I liked it more. Mainly because since it is after humanity's already starting to be decimated, we don't have that whole thing, and it also doesn't have as many throwbacks to the original series. They were like, really? It doesn't have as many things that kind of gave me like little annoyances like this film did. Mainly like nitpicks and all like. And also since it's a post-apocalyptic one, it could be its own thing more. If I were to give this film a rating, I'd say at least a 4 out of 5. It does come with my recommendation if you are curious. If you have no interest in seeing a new Planet of the Apes series, you might want to skip it. Or at least skip to the next one, because it's not really required to watch this one to watch the second one. You understand it a bit more so the character of Caesar, but it's not a requirement.